Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the E3 podcast. I'm Melissa Johnson. Today I have Anna Villalobos on. Sorry, I almost butchered it. And then we just talked about this.
You did fine.
So Anna's super awesome. She's here in San Antonio with me, actually, part of our Invest Her group. So we've got to know each other a little bit there. But can you share with the audience kind of who you are, how you got started on your real estate journey, and where you're at today?
Yes, absolutely. So I started my journey. I like to tell, I always think of life as like a journey and a process, right? And it all comes together at different points in our lives. Like all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's why that thing 15 years ago happened because of this thing that's happening right now. And you start to put the pieces together. And so growing up, we moved a lot, first of all, but then when we finally did settle, our house was constantly being renovated. Like we were just adding on and, creating, and it was never done, never. And I remember like getting to be in my early 20s and I thought, I'm never going to live like that. Like I'm not living like that. It's just, my life is going to be different. And I had children and, we did, like, I tried to have like homes that were not being renovated. And then like, it just sort of slowly kind of creeped in all like throughout my life. It was just like always happening. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make that not happen. But anyway, so then I was like painting walls, the kids were growing up and I was painting a wall and then I was like knocking this down and then I was building this and it just kind of kept being a part of my life and I just sort of naturally gravitated towards it. But nonetheless, when I was in my teens, I was like, I'm going to be a psychologist. That's what my life is going to be. So when my kids got a little older, I got my degree in psychology. And I was determined that's what I was going to do. And still like real estate just kept coming into my life and renovation and homes. And then in the course of motherhood and all of those things, I realized how much I loved creating homes and I loved taking care of people. And I loved making sure everybody has, that feminine part of me that's like, does everybody have enough food? Does everybody have enough blankets? Like, are you good? Everybody's good. Okay, I can sleep now, And so, I think I just finally came to a point in my mid 40s where I was like, I just thought I need to stop trying to be something I'm not. And I just need to say yes to what is showing up in my desire, in my being, in my life. And so I finally did. And at that point in time, and by that point, my kids were grown and they were in relationships, hadn't had grandkids at that point. But I do now.
I was going to say, you do, right?
I do, and I love it. Thank you. So then I finally just said yes to it, and it's just sort of evolved from there. And I don't know, at this point, I could probably stop just going on and on about it. We'll probably talk a little bit more about how that part of it happened. But yeah, it's just, so now I'm in the real estate world, and that's what I do, and I love it. So, and specifically, I love Airbnbs.
That's awesome. I love how you were talking about like real estate just keeps showing up in your life. And isn't that funny how that happens? Like sometimes we're just so unaware maybe of these things that do keep showing up that might be part of your life purpose, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there are so many people walking around trying to figure out, and I was one of those that I kept trying to figure out, like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And it felt like I was like, now that I'm in it, I can look back on it and I can see that at that time, I thought it was some big, huge thing that was going to like land in my lap and it was going to be gigantic. And it was like this amazing purpose. And the truth is, it is an amazing purpose and it's been in my face the whole time. And I just finally had to say yes to it. And that was it. That was really what it all came down to.
It's like so really funny. Leaning into that, right? Like leaning into something like a passion.
Exactly. And I would say, in fact, if I were going to advise people, I would say, if it's something you're resisting, then more than likely that's actually the thing. If you're trying not to do it, then that's probably the thing that you're needing to do.
I feel like I
So
can agree with that because a lot of times
yeah.
resistance does show up that way because
Hmm.
you're looking at something and it's uncomfortable, right? Because it's growth and it's something
Right.
new and you're leaving behind this thing that you thought you wanted and that was safe and
Right.
comfortable that you knew for so long to go into this whole
Exactly.
unknown thing, but when you lean into that, it's almost like it's just saying, okay, challenge accepted. And then just it kind of
Yes.
falls into place, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly the truth.
Awesome. So let's talk about these Airbnbs because I know that you do flip houses too, but
I
how
do.
did you get into how did you decide to jump into the Airbnb thing?
Again, it just sort of fell into, well, I don't want to say it fell into my lap. I mean, I don't think that ever really does happen. It sort of does, but not really. Because we create, I do believe that we create doors, like they open up, and we can choose to step in or not.
Mhm.
So, what happened was I was in a long-term relationship. I had divorced. I've been married for 14 years. I've divorced. I was in a relationship for about 10 years off and on. Like we were together and then we break up and then together. Well, in that togetherness at one point, here in San Antonio, it was right when the Pearl was starting, like they had started building it. And I was kind of like watching. I've always loved house watching. There's people watching, then there's house watching and neighborhood watching, and
Mhm.
like not in a creepy way, but I like to see like what's going on, and this house is being renovated, and this one and this one and this one, and so you can kind of start to see what I have now learned is called the path of progress. Like you can see where, oh, this is where the next thing is going to be, more than likely. I mean, you're still guessing, but more than likely that's it. So when I saw the Pearl, I thought, okay, I personally would love to live down there. And so I was in this relationship, and I said I'd love to have a house down there. And I would like to search Zillow every day. And I found this house, and it was literally falling apart. Um, and it was just this old rotten house, but it was down there. It was in that area.
Was it
And
in Government
this was
Hill?
no, it was on the other side. So it was in Government Hill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I said, we should do it. It was on Zillow, which is so crazy now. Now I look at it, I'm like, how the heck did I find that? So we had another business, an eBay business, and we had enough money in savings that we could pay cash for it. So we just went and bought it for cash. And it was only $23,000, which is incredible. Incredible. Like if you look at the market down there right
Oh,
now.
I was just down there recently and I was floored.
Yes, it is insane. So, this guy and I broke up again, and it was really like the full end of our relationship. Like, okay, we're not getting back together. We've had our run. It's been great. I love you, but we're just not doing this anymore. And in the course of that, we were sort of divvying things up. And one of the things he said was, you love this house. You wanted this house. Here, you take it. And so I said, okay, sounds good. So I took it, and I held on to it for about 3 years because I had no idea what to do with it. And I was heartbroken. My heart was aching. I was like, I can't live in this house. It needs to be fixed up, all this stuff. So then after about 3 years, another friend and I started talking, and he and his business partner in Dallas were flipping houses. And I mentioned my house to him. He said, oh, well, let me come take a look at it. Maybe I could partner with you on it. And so he came down, took a look at it and said, yeah, let's do this. This is a great area. We should just do this. And so we did. And it has turned into this incredible little, not turned into, but we turned it into an incredible little duplex right down there, Government Hill. Um, and it's like the only cute house on the street. Because my sweet neighbors are still just like hanging in there, hanging on to their places. So, and then as we were finishing up the rehab, I was like, okay, I got to cash flow this thing, because I owe the partnership a lot of, some money, and I need to cash flow it. And rent was so. And I heard about Airbnb, and I thought, what if we just give that a try? And I had a duplex. So I thought one side I could Airbnb, one side I could long-term rent. Voila, cash flow. And I did. And I say I did, but it was a long, journey, that getting that all together and figuring it all out, and how to even do a listing, and how to, get ratings and reviews, and how to decorate a place, and what all you need to do. And but anyway, we ended up putting it together, and here we are 3 years later, and it's doing really well.
So
And I ended up it,
are
the
you
one
still
side was, yeah, so the one Airbnb side did so well. I was trying to long-term rent the other side, and just wasn't. And so I thought, we'll just Airbnb that one, you know. So
yeah,
that
that's
was it. And then that's when I started to go, oh my gosh, I love this. I get to take care of people and love on them, from a distance, but still.
mm-hmm. So
So
it fits who you are and what you want to do.
absolutely, exactly. That's my personality, so it's
So
great.
how many have you done at this point now?
Um, I personally have four, and then I manage four others, and then I have also decorated several others. So, and then I do some consulting as well. A lot of people call me because there are so many details when you're putting together an Airbnb. Um, I stick to the city of San Antonio. I haven't ventured out into other cities. And I don't know if I'll do that. I'm just going to sort of let it happen. We'll see what happens. But there are so many details, from furnishing to the right towels, to making sure you have the proper permits, and you're paying your taxes, and you know what those taxes are, and you know what the laws are. And there's just so much detail to it, that the consulting part actually is, it's been a good business for me as well. And then the decorating part's just fun.
I know. I feel like that would be my favorite part, actually.
Yes,
As much as I
absolutely it
love the
is.
systems and the processes, I mean, let's just
Uh-huh.
like fixing something up, making it cute, decorating it is just
Oh
it's
yeah,
fun.
it is. And then to get reviews all the time. And so this is just the ego part of me. It's like I get reviews all the, oh, your place is so cute. Where'd you get the blah blah blah? Where'd you get the lamp? Where'd you get I get my ego fed every day.
What could be better?
Exactly.
How funny. So I imagine through this process, it sounds like there are a lot of moving pieces to this. So did
Mhm.
you kind of just jump in and learn as you went along, or did you get any kind of, I don't know, it's fun training, or, kind of how did you figure out how to do all this stuff, just by trial and
So
error?
absolutely, trial and error. So I tell people this, I'm a Virgo. And so if there's a hard way to do something, a Virgo will figure out what that way is, and they will do it.
I can see
So,
that. I know a few Virgos.
like, what's the very hardest way? I'm going to do it that way. And so, so yeah, I mean, it's just been, that's exactly what it was, just trial and error. Like, okay, how do I furnish an Airbnb? And literally not even, you know, okay, I'll say there is, because you kind of reach a point in life where, like, okay, am I going to be led by grit or by inspiration? And I sort of have reached that place, where I'm like, oh no, I'm just going to do things when I feel inspired to do them, not because I'm like going to grit my way through it. And
Mhm.
so that part of it was, even the decorating was like, okay, I'm not going to look at other Airbnbs, which probably would actually be a really smart thing to do, but I'm going to do what I think would be beautiful. And so, so I started looking, I got on Pinterest, and the decorating part I got on Pinterest, and I started piecing together like what I like. And I was on a super budget, super budget. So I did a lot of Facebook Marketplace and garage sales and, you know, piecing things together. But it literally has just been trial and error. Like, what do I do if I have a guest that's unhappy? How do I deal with that? I have no idea. I don't know. What would I want if I were a guest? That's usually my answer. How would I want to be treated? What would I want that person to say to me if I were scared? Because government feels a little rough looking. It's not actually rough, but it looks rough. And so people coming in from out of town that don't know San Antonio, don't know the area, could be a little frightened. And then it went from that to, oh, I need to actually just give people the heads up. Like, let them know you're going to be driving into an area that looks a little scary. Just be totally upfront and say, this is what's going to happen, manage expectations. And so just little bit by little bit, piecing it together, how to actually make it happen.
I think that's important too, giving people that heads up, because I've been in that situation myself too. Like I've stayed in some Airbnbs in Austin, and they had, that I guess it's like South Austin or whatever, that whole area where it is very much like Government Hill and Dinwiddie, those areas where it's all this, new construction and houses falling down around it, and tenants with like 50 dogs running the streets and those kind of like people just roaming around, with no purpose during the day. It's like, why aren't you at work?
Yeah.
So it's a little shady, but when I had the heads up, and then once I got there, it was fine, but it was good knowing in advance kind of what you're going into if you're doing Airbnbs in those type of areas, those like gentrification areas, I think. And those seem to be very popular too for Airbnbs, I feel like.
I think so too. I think they're unique. Usually those areas are going to be closer to downtown for one, which is helpful, but then also they're just unique homes. The houses themselves are just beautiful, and they're rehabbed and, have hardwood floors and the whole, the old bathtubs.
The charm.
Romantic and charming. Exactly.
It's the stuff you don't get when you stay in a hotel room.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's why I like Airbnbs. I like that it feels like a home, when there. I feel like, you're not confined to just one room. You've got that space, especially when you have a family. Like I have kids. So when I travel these days, we almost always get Airbnbs just because we need the space.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's great too for like larger like families that want to meet in the middle. Like if they're up north and south, and hey, can we meet somewhere in Waco, for example, and get a big house and all be together and fight and yell and have a good time and not get in trouble.
Fun. So let's talk about some do's and don'ts with Airbnbs. So what are some things that if people are looking to get into turning properties, flips that they might have, or actively just seeking out for the purpose of Airbnb, what are some things that people should be doing?
Okay. Well, first and foremost would be exactly what we just talked about, which is, there are so many different aspects of it, but when you're a host, you want to always be upfront with your guests, because if they know what is happening, they're fine, or they'll say no to it if they're a no. And you can even offer that, say, hey, look, this is what the situation is. Yes or no, and whatever that is, whether there's a pool or, you have certain rules that you want them to follow. If they know up front, they can choose whether or not they say yes to it. And if you hide it from them, they feel duped and they don't feel comfortable. Nobody feels comfortable that way. And so that's one of the biggest ones right there that I have found, is just be fully upfront and fully honest. And the guests that are your guests that are meant to come to you will be the ones that show up, because they know what they're getting.
Yeah.
And then don't just do it for the money. That's another one that I have really just sort of fully integrated, is that it can be really good money, but I see so many people jump on the Airbnb bandwagon thinking, oh, I'm going to make so much money. Well, if you come at it from that direction energetically, you sort of shoot yourself in the foot. You have to actually love it. And you have to sort of have some sort of, what I'm finding is have some sort of connection to your potential guests. I had someone I consulted with the other day that he was a young man. He's wanting to do apartments in an apartment complex and like do arbitrage, the Airbnb arbitrage. And the very first thing I said was, know who your guest is. Don't try to go after somebody you don't understand, because you're not gonna do that well. And so he was like, oh yeah. And so he knows exactly it's like knowing your audience, know your guest.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so that would be my second one. And then probably my third would be, and this is more on the material side, don't just go to Goodwill or get your grandma's old blankets or, old pillows or whatever. Like, really, if you're going to do an Airbnb, do it properly. I mean, you don't have to go buy all brand new stuff by any means, but really, like, have a theme, have an idea in mind, have a system. Like, I have a system that I go through. Like, I start with the beds, and then I go from the beds to, like the chunkier furniture and but I always have an idea, a theme or an idea in mind as I'm building the house and putting it together.
Okay.
And what it does, and I'll tell you why it's so important to do that, because most of the time when we walk into an experience, and an Airbnb is an experience, most of the time when we walk into an experience, we don't really know cognitively what makes us comfortable. But what I've learned is what makes people comfortable is consistency. If, the colors make sense in a room, then it, people feel good in that room.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't make any sense in a hodgepodge of like 15 different colors, which even that can be a theme, but you have to be careful, and just really make that obvious that that's the theme. And so that's why it's important to really pay attention to those things and not just, pick up a vase you see at the Goodwill because it's $2, and really think about, does this actually fit what I'm trying to create? So
I like that. So having something that's kind of, because you're right, like, it is an experience. And that's one of the things, like, as a Airbnb, what do you want to say? Somebody that stays in Airbnbs.
Yes.
Like, what's the word? I look for that too. Like, I look for, like, if I'm staying in Austin, I know that I want to stay in kind of a funky, quirky place, and those they design them that way. And I'm sure it's very intentional in how they're doing that, because that's what people expect when they go to Austin. They expect, weird, or,
yes,
like
quirky and
quirky and all those things, because that's normal for Austin. When you
right.
go to San Antonio, you probably expect to see more of like something kind of like with the heritage here, or being in Texas, like that kind of thing. Or if you're downtown, it might be a different. So I think the vibe has to match the property probably, and the geographical area where you're at too.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's me making an assumption, but it sounds like that's what you're doing too. It makes sense.
Yes.
You're
Exactly.
Airbnb in Colorado, you want it to be like a mountainous lodge kind of feeling,
right?
Wood and bears everywhere.
Yes, exactly.
So, so what are some things people should not do? What are some things to avoid doing? Some mistakes you think that people might make trying to Airbnb out a property?
Well, first of all, try not to have too many expectations. I know a great one is, do not take people's complaints personally. That one took me a little while. Like, I had to really just sort of get to a place where I could separate their concerns or complaints or worries or whatever from me personally, as the owner or the person putting it together. And, really get to the place where I could understand them and not make it about me. And so that's one of the big ones, is don't take anything personally, because you're going to hear junk. People are going to be unhappy. I had a complaint the other day. Oh my goodness. This one was like a whole brand new one. I was like, really? Okay. I never thought about that. And literally he put it in the review. He does not, like, privately, because guests can like do a review that everybody sees, and then they get the opportunity to address you directly.
Mm-hmm.
And he put the tops of the doors were dusty. And I just was like, okay.
Okay. First of all, why was he touching the top of the door? Was he like 7 foot tall? Wow.
I was just like, oh gosh, okay. Never thought about dusting the top of the door, but obviously there are some people that do. So those doors are dusted now.
Wow. Probably made it part of your process now, right?
Yes, exactly. It's like, okay, got to add that into the list. And then that's another thing, is that is getting to the place where you can actually take those complaints and appreciate them, value them. Like, oh, okay, all he's doing is helping me elevate my product. Now it's going to be even better. Nobody will ever have dusty tops of doors ever again.
The world is safe from it now. What if they complain about? I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. That's crazy.
What I find is there are some people that are just going to complain. And this is what I tell my cleaners. I said, you know what, if that is what they're complaining about, they couldn't find anything else. So praise to us, because that means that it was so good, he couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I turn it into a good.
Yeah, it's difficult when it's not a really constructive complaint,
Yes. Yeah.
It's just like, you're just complaining. Like, there are some things you can do something about, but then there are other things you have no control over. And so I think
Right.
trying to discern between those things and then address what needs to be addressed.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh. So with all these properties that you have, like, do you manage them yourself or do you outsource that to somebody else?
No, I actually manage myself, and then I also manage other people's properties as well. And I love that. To me, it's like even better, because I get to be in connection with the owners of the homes. I get to kind of be like the cushion between the guests and the owners, and they get to have this product that is theirs. They own it. They're actually creating equity, building equity in their homes as well over time, building cash flow every month. And they have somebody else to deal with all the little things that come along with having an Airbnb.
So if somebody wanted to take a property that they have existing and turn it into an Airbnb, what does that process look like? What are the steps that you need to take to make that happen?
The very first thing that I do is I have a software program called AirDNA. If you've done any research into Airbnbs or STR, short-term rentals, you've probably heard of AirDNA. And basically, it's a software that just does an analysis of properties in neighborhoods. Like, this is how they did over the past 12 months. And this is how much occupancy, this is about how much on a daily rate they were getting. And of course, right now we're all still recovering from COVID. So the past 12 months, I always warn people, just, it's not really real. Like, we can't, and so, but I have another program that I use that I built, actually. It's a spreadsheet. And, but I take my numbers from them, and then I put them together with mine and what I know I've done. And I build that out, and then, and I give them back feedback on that. And then the next thing is so the first thing is to even see, is it even going to be worth it? And then the very next thing is to check permitting, because here in San Antonio, we have density ratios. So the city will allow permits for certain areas. I had an interesting thing the other day. Someone that I'm consulting with right now. Um, I told her, "Hey, look, you're good to go. You can file for a permit. You should be able to get it because there are no Airbnbs in your neighborhood." And she writes me back and she sends me a screenshot of Airbnb, and she said there are tons of Airbnbs in my neighborhood. And I said, "Okay, well, the city does not know that. So
Oh,
you get your permit right now because, the city's cracking down. And if you're not permitted, you have to shut it down. And you don't want to have spent all that money on furnishing and prepping and not be legal and then get shut down because then you've just wasted a lot of time and money." So that's the second thing. And the third thing, is to start, well, it's starting the permitting process. So find out if you can get a permit and then start the process immediately. The minute you even think you want to do it.
hmm. That's, I was wondering about that because I know, I haven't done an Airbnb before, but I know some friends that were going to do some like in New Braunfels, because that's another hot area to do Airbnbs.
Yes.
And they put a limit on it, where
Mm-hmm.
they only have, X amount. And I think it's probably like based on area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like you can only have, 5 Airbnbs in this square mile radius or whatever.
Right. And here in San Antonio, it's on a block face and
Okay.
it's 12%. So let's just say you have, 10 houses, and the numbers aren't going to work out real well here, but 10 houses on the neighborhood, 1.2 of those houses can be an Airbnb. So you would only be able to do one on that street. So it is limited, and you do have to know that before you start down that road.
Oh, I guess unless they count, because on Airbnb you can rent out by the room too, so that could be your Airbnb
Yes.
too, right?
Yeah. And so but if you do that, though, you can get one permit for your whole house, and that applies to all the different
Oh, does it?
things
See,
that you have. Yes.
good to know, because some people might
Yes.
want to just Airbnb out a room, not their whole
Mm-hmm.
house, and so that, but you would still need to pull a permit for that, right?
You'd still need to pull a permit. And the cool thing is that if you have a permit, then let's just say you go on vacation for a couple of weeks and you're like, "Oh, well, I might as well just make some money while I'm gone." Then you can actually Airbnb your whole house with the same permit. So you just have to build a new listing.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So it sounds
The
like
other thing,
easy
yeah,
process.
when it's a little tedious, I mean, I think always when you distill things down to like an outline, it makes it look like, oh yeah, it's super easy. Just go get a permit. Just look at Pinterest and there you go. It's like,
So
then
much
you
more
start
work
doing
involved.
it and you're like midnight trying to put furniture together and you're crying and like, then there's real life.
Right? Yeah, it does. I guess that does make it sound really easy. Yeah, just look on Pinterest and then just get a permit and you're done. Like, now just wait for the money to come
Ding.
in.
Exactly. Exactly.
So how do
So,
you how do you market these properties? Do you just market them just straight on Airbnb?
you know, so that is one of the things I'm really wrestling with because I call it Airbnb. Really, it's a short-term rental. That's Airbnb is sort of a coined, obviously it's a brand,
Right.
and so now for myself, I only use Airbnb. Other people use all of the different, like Airbnb and VRBO and booking.com and, Travelocity and all these different venues. I have found the more niched I am, the better I do. If I just stop spreading myself so thin and just really get zoned in on one thing, I am just better off. And so that's what I let my again, on when I'm on my management side, I just let my people know, my hosts or my owners know, hey, I only use Airbnb. So if you want somebody that's going to use all these other things and software programs and put this together and give you 1,000 bookings, then I'm not your person. If you want somebody that's going to be personable, that's going to use Airbnb, that's, like right there with the property, I'm your person. And so there are lots of different ways you can go though. And there are tons of programs where you can integrate calendars and you can get super, super complicated with it. I'm actually surprised I didn't go down that road because I do like to get complicated, but I just finally was like, no, forget it. I'm just doing Airbnb. And I've had great success. And what I found is the longer that I'm on Airbnb, the better I'm doing. It's a momentum based, I mean, I've been on there long enough. I've got a ton of reviews. Um, and as you build more reviews, you develop your superhost level, profile, then you show up higher in the search engine, and it starts to sort of manage itself, not completely, but it sort of does.
So how does one become a super host? Is it based on reviews and in length of time, or how does that work exactly?
It's threefold actually. You have to have at least 10 stays, which is super easy, 10 stays in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I'll take that back. In 3 months, you have to have 10 stays in 3 months. And a 4.9 or higher in your reviews for your reviews as a host, which is really interesting. We could talk about that a little bit. And then the other thing is, oh gosh, there's one more. Shoot, what is it? I can't think of the third one. But anyway, it actually is pretty easy to do if you're diligent, you're paying attention, and you are approaching this as your business.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually really easy to do. Or if you just approach it as with love, like, oh, I love my property and I'm taking care of it. And I'm taking care of my people,
So back to the reviews. So dig into that a little bit.
Oh goodness. So a lot of people, because they use the star method, with Airbnb,
Mm-hmm.
people think 5-star. Well, their automatic cultural connection is to 5-star hotels, right?
Right.
And a 5-star hotel is very different than a 5-star Airbnb. And so I actually explain that to my guests in my guidebook that I have at the houses, because it's confusing for them. They're like, oh, well, no, this wasn't a 5-star hotel. I didn't have, a concierge outside my door, And
Where
so
was
I
my robe?
explain, yes, my heated robe. And so, so I had to explain that. No, this is different. And if you give me a 4.8, thinking you're still giving me a good score, you're actually not giving me a good score. You're saying, it was okay, yeah, you had towels, you had toilet paper, you had a really clean place, you had nice sheets, you had nice pillows, it's like, you've got all these great things, great location. So I just had to basically educating your guests in a very kind way. Like, hey, by the way,
That's really
5 stars, please.
Yeah, but I like that that you explain that, because I think, that actually never occurred to me.
Yeah.
Equating, like, I think I would approach it that way, but I could see how a lot of people would think,
Right.
well, 5 stars, this wasn't like the fanciest place I've ever stayed.
Exactly.
That's not the
Exactly.
basis for the 5-star rating, right? It's like, how clean was it? Was it comfortable? Was it in a good
Right.
location? Were you responsive, to their
Mm-hmm.
questions? Was the parking situation good? Things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably play more into that 5-star thing, right? Than just
Right. Right. And one of the formulas I have found that works really well is I have that explanation in the guidebook. I mentioned in the check-in information, I'm here if you need me. I want you to have a 5-star stay. And then at the end, when they leave, the minute they check out, I send a message that says, so glad you stayed. Thank you for being my guest. I hope you had a 5-star stay. So I like really 5 stars, 5 stars.
you should just buy like 5 stars and stick them like randomly around the house all in a row,
I love it. I love it. That's a really
like
good
5 stars lined up in the kitchen, and 5 stars in the bedroom, the bathroom. I love it. It's subliminal, right?
Yes, absolutely. I love it. That's brilliant, Melissa. Okay. I'll
There's your
send
goal.
pictures.
I want to know how that works out if you actually do it. Funny. So I like the guidebook thing. So tell me, what are some things that people should put in a guidebook when they're doing an Airbnb? What are some useful things to have in there?
I mean, you're interacting with, or you're hosting people who are coming from, who could be Indiana. I mean, they've never been to San Antonio. And so I think one of the great things about Airbnbs and short-term rentals is that they're getting the opportunity to stay in a home, which is different, like you said, than a hotel. And they get to have a local experience. So I think it's great as guests for us to put in, I mean, as hosts, to put our favorites as locals. Like, this is my favorite restaurant, and this is my favorite margarita, and this is my favorite coffee shop, and this is why I like it, and really it lets them know you as the host too. So that's one big thing, is your favorites, your best. And then I like to just put in the highlights as well of the city, like, oh, we've got SeaWorld, we've got, Fiesta, Texas, we've got the Alamo, we've got the Riverwalk. So we've got these different areas. And then just kind of the rules, like, this is how this house works. We have quiet time from 10 at night, because it's a duplex. So from 10 at night to 8 in the morning, we need for you to keep it down. If you don't, I'll have to ask you to leave, just like real upfront about the house rules. The 5-star rating thing, like, I do talk about that in the guidebook. And anything you want them to know, like anything you want them to know about the house, about your city, about who you are. That's something else I love to do, is I have books. It's like just notebooks. And I just ask the guests, like, tell me where you came from, how long you stayed, what your favorite thing was about your visit, and I cannot believe how often people sit down and actually just fill it out. And it's so heartwarming to read what people enjoy about our city.
That's fun. And you probably, I mean, I would imagine you could come up with some new things in there too. It might be
Yes.
people ideas, or like discovered something maybe you didn't even know about, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I leave it there at the house, so my other guests can actually sort of like look through, and they can find things that, that even I didn't know about. I found a few things I didn't know about. Guests have shared with me things. I'm like, oh, I didn't know we had one of those.
That's happened to me before too, actually. I think when I stayed in one, it was one of those times where I just needed some like space and time alone. And so I got an Airbnb, and
Good for
now I'm wondering if
you.
I stayed in your Airbnb. I don't know, because it was over there somewhere. But yeah, there was like a list of some like random stuff to do. And I didn't even know that was there. Like, I went to this tiny little shop that had like crystals and like all these cool things in it.
Oh,
I didn't know that
cool.
existed.
That is so neat.
You
San
know?
Antonio is such an awesome city. I love San Antonio. It's just it's like that. It's like you go to these different areas, and there's just these pockets of like really cool, fun stuff everywhere you go in the whole city. Like, I've never been anywhere that I wasn't like, oh my gosh, that is so cool.
So I'm curious to know also, just like with COVID and everything that happened last year, how did that affect your business?
Um, Gosh, it was, I think, just like everyone, it was really challenging. I had over $8,000 net coming, or I'm sorry, gross coming to me the month of March last year. And literally in the course of 3 days, it dove down to less than 1,000.
Oh,
And I was, I was kind of in between, because I thought, okay, you know what? Well, first of all, I did kind of see it coming, and I had already called my business partner. I said, look, I have a feeling this is not going to be good, and I think we need to prepare. Um, I think we can get through it, but we need to be aware that this is coming down the road. Have no imagination it would go on as long as it has. But I said, these are so I started doing some other things. Like, I put us on some different listings for longer terms and for longer term bookings. And so we got that going ahead of the curve. And I'm so glad we did. And that's actually what saved us. So we ended up making it through. There were a couple things. First of all, I was not overextended, which was really helpful. And then, or we're not overextended, which probably saved us too. We saw what was coming down the road, and so we prepared for it. And then it affected the daily rates, and it affected the number of bookings. So it really hit us. I think the travel industry honestly got hit the hardest, as a result of COVID, between hotels, short-term rentals, and anything travel, airplane, train, whatever. So, man, it was scary. I had to breathe through it. Did a lot of meditating.
Yeah, that was not a fun time at all.
No.
But thinking about too, like, think about San Antonio, like we have a lot of industry and stuff here too, but we still are very heavily invested in tourism, and we rely on that as a big source of our income here. And so I think
Absolutely.
when that happened, like people like you with Airbnbs and all the hotels and everything, there's so many of them here in San Antonio. It was probably pretty difficult, I guess.
It was. I mean, it did shift the way, like I said, I ended up with more longer term stays with lower daily rates, which was enough to cover the bills. And that was it. Like, there was no profit being made. I was cleaning just to keep keep the boat going, and throwing that money back into the pot, So, it was like, okay, we can do this. We can do it. We can get through it. It's going to be hard, but we can. So, but man, it is really starting to bustle. It's really shifting, and I'm so grateful. I feel like I've taken a deep breath for the first time in a year.
I just told somebody yesterday, I said, oh my God, I feel like I can breathe finally. Like, I just unloaded a property that I've had for a little while, and it's going to be a great deal, but it's like, okay, things are moving forward again. Cause I feel like we were just sitting for so long, just stagnant, because you really wasn't much you could do. And even now still, I feel like, it's been a little bit more difficult, challenging getting deals. Even it's been, everybody's selling, retail. It's a good time for that, but being able to pick up properties at the prices that people like us need to buy, it's been a challenge. I don't know if you've seen that too.
Yeah, no, I've seen it too, very much so. It's so funny now that you mentioned, I'm thinking, like, right when that hit, I had literally just closed on a flip as well. And I was just like, oh, what have I done? What have I done? Thank goodness it turned out okay, but man.
I had done that too. I just bought one, I think, and at the end of 2019, and we had rehabbed it. And I think right when COVID started in March was when we were ready to go on the market. And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? What if this house doesn't sell?
Oh,
it was just so unknown, but it was actually turned out fine, because I just did like a video, walk through of the property and stuff. And we shared that with, potential buyers, and we still listed it, and we still had multiple offers and sold it quickly. But
that's so good.
Touch and go there at first, just
to
figure out,
absolutely.
like you just didn't know what was going to happen. It's either going to go or it's going to sit for an indefinite amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've thought about it because a lot of people did the Airbnb arbitrage, or the short-term rental arbitrage thing, which is where you rent a property, you pay the rent, but then you Airbnb or whatever it out, short-term rental it out, and then you make cash flow. You just make whatever above. And I saw left and right. I'm part of like Facebook groups, Airbnb Facebook groups, and left and right people. Those guys were just absolutely just like dropping like flies. I felt horrible. I mean, I just felt like watching a tidal wave, take people out. And so my advice, if anybody were to try to do it, I would never do it that way. I just wouldn't. I don't think it's a smart. I mean, it's a good short-term way to make some cash, but you really want to be investing in property so that your property value is going up, rather than, so that way you're building equity while you're cash flowing. And so, yeah, I mean, I just watched it and I just felt terrible. I mean, a lot of them were like younger people that were just like making bank for a little while. Put that money away, put it aside, and be ready for a tidal wave. And if it never comes, great. You've got a lot of little stash there, but be ready. You never know what can happen.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think last year taught all of us that we should be prepared. And that's something like in my coaching, I've incorporated too, with telling people like, we need to talk about reserves. Do you even have them?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know for me, like nothing was happening last year. I mean, we couldn't buy anything. I mean, it was just dead. And luckily
Yeah.
we had reserves built up to weather us through all that. But reserves are only going to last so long. But think about if you didn't
Right.
have any at all and something like that
Mm-hmm.
happens. And I think that's where a lot of people got in trouble, was because,
Mm-hmm.
you're just, everything's gravy, and we get
Mm-hmm.
complacent and you don't think to prepare for, things that could possibly happen in the future. Not that I want to be preaching disaster or anything like that, but things happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you have
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
prepared. And so you have to, like you have to have reserves, and you have to learn how to pivot, in different ways and
Mm-hmm.
try different strategies to get by in the meantime.
Yeah. Pivot. I love that word. That is like the name of it right there. And I think, some people, I love the word pivot. I think that's a great way to say it. Some people will call it innovate. Okay, whatever. I like
I like
pivot.
pivot too, because I feel like that's what it is. I feel like I'm just like,
Yes,
okay, now we're gonna do
exactly.
this. It's like an actual
Exactly.
movement that I'm making.
Yes. We did it. We turned sideways.
Yeah,
Yes.
you gotta go in this direction now. Doesn't mean you can
Yes,
come back to where you were, but sometimes it's a
exactly.
temporary shift, and that's, something too, being in the business for a long time, it's knowing all these different exit strategies and when to deploy them, depending on what's
Mm-hmm.
going on in the market. So you've got to
Mm-hmm.
be able to make those shifts so that you can stay in business. Otherwise, if you can't pivot and change, that could be very well the end of your business.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, if you, and see, that's one of the things I love about short-term rentals too, is it gives you another exit strategy. Like
Yes.
if you end up stuck with a property that you can't do anything with, then, that might be a really good alternative to weathering, any kind of market that's happening, weird market that's happening with real estate. And I always think when I am buying a property, I always think in those terms. Okay, where is it located? Is it somewhere where I could turn it into a short-term rental if needed?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to and not sell it? Maybe that's the route to go. But I think it's a great way for people to have another route to go. Um,
Yeah, I think it's a good exit strategy, and vice versa too. Maybe you buy it as a short-term rental, and then over time,
mhm.
you know, maybe the value of it increased so much where you're like, you know what, I'm ready to just cash out of this. I'm tired of messing with, this kind of thing, or whatever. Everybody's got different
Mhm.
reasons for doing stuff. Maybe they want to retire, or I don't know, whatever, cash out for any reason. You could turn around and
Right.
sell it, or you could rent it out as, long-term rental, or owner
Yes.
finance, sell it, or
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I love about short-term rentals, that I think would make it really hard for me. I mean, I will do it anyway at some point, but I think it'll make it hard for me to long-term rent is, that you have such hands-on with your property. Like you get to see, if you want to see your property like 3 times a week, you can, I mean, you can go check it out, inspect it, make sure everything's good, make sure the air filter, blah, 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 and it's getting cleaned, the floors are being mopped, the toilets are being scrubbed, and there's no buildup of that for like a year or 2 years or 5 years, however long people live in it. So it's a really great way to maintain a property as well. One thing I was going to say when you mentioned buying a property that's short term, if somebody were to do that, one piece of advice I would give them is, so I mean, we all try to show the best side, right? We all try to make it look, oh, look, I'm bringing in so much money. With short-term rentals, you also are putting out a lot of money. So you might bring in a lot, but you're putting out more than you would on long terms. So make sure that they break those numbers down for you. How much of that you're bringing in is going to cleaning fees? How much of that, because that's going to somebody else. It's not going to you. how much of that is for your maintenance? How much of that is for towels that you need to replace? You know, I mean, those little things are, it's important to know those numbers.
Oh yeah.
And they're not numbers that are
Down.
typical.
Yeah, because you probably, I mean, there are things that have to be replenished, right? Like
Yeah.
toilet paper, if you're providing that for
Mm-hmm.
sure, and paper towels, maybe just like all those, but those little things add up, I imagine, over
They
time.
do.
Keeping
They
an
do.
eye on that would be important. And then like
Yeah.
what kind of fees does Airbnb take from your bookings?
They take 3% of your booking, so it's not terrible. I'll tell you where it hurts, but you know what? I'm just at a place where I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna be grateful. Um, like Brene Brown says, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. No, is hotel taxes. So in San Antonio, Texas, you have to pay hotel taxes to the city, the county, and the state. Luckily, there's a way to actually work it in the system so that the guest is paying that and you're not paying that. The money does come to you, but then you have to pass it on. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, it's like there's a lot to it. There are a lot of details to pay attention to.
That's a good point
Okay.
too, for people to remember those hotel taxes, because I know in a lot of cities they do charge those. I know they do in San Antonio.
Yeah, yeah, they do. And there's a way to set it up in the system so that the guest is paying it. It's not easy to navigate. So that's another
But it can be
little,
done.
it can be done, and I can show you. For the low fee of, no.
It's got to be worth your time, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Right.
I do. I try to be helpful. And another great way to just get it free is to go onto the Airbnb Facebook groups. We all just talk about, this is how I'm doing it, this is how I'm doing it. So if you want like somebody that's a one-stop shop, I can be that person, or you can just kind of figure it out, do it the hard way. Like I would. And go sort of like sift through the Facebook groups. So
Well, if people, this has been great. I feel like I've learned a ton.
yeah,
I feel like
me
the
too.
audience is going to get something out of this, because I know that there's so many people I've talked to are like, yeah, okay, I've been thinking about it, and I have friends that are doing it too, like all over the country. But it's kind of nice to hear sort of the breakdown and sort of the behind the scenes of what goes on with doing the Airbnbs. So if anyone wanted to get in touch with you and maybe talk to you more about how you're doing this in a little more detail, or consulting, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, multiple ways. I have a website. I'm actually doing a website, like an official website launch. So this is officially becoming a family business, because it's just been me for a while. But my sweet daughter-in-law has come on. She is wonderful. She's like pulled my life together in so many ways. But she's come on board, and she's managing my website and my Facebook and like all my groups and all my things for me. So I have a website. It's called villaconvida.com, and it's Villa, the first 5-6 letters of my name, con vida, vida, and that stands for house with life. That's why I named it that. So villaconvida.com. Thanks. And then, of course, you can call me 210-854-7038. And then also Facebook, Anna Villalobos. And it's 2 L's. Actually, there are a total of 3 L's in my name. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Great. Well, we'll share that in the notes too, so that people want to reach
Well,
out to
thank
you, they
you.
can. And I appreciate so much your time on this Friday
Oh,
afternoon. And
thank
just
you. It's been
thank you
great,
so much for
Melissa.
sharing.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I've just gotten to know you even better. You're just really amazing for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. I love that you're just highlighting all these women doing all these amazing things like we were talking about. I mean, we
I
just,
know.
we get to actually talk about it.
I know. Get these women out from under the radar and bring them to the light. Let's talk about it. There's some great stuff that's going to be coming up, like people that are just, I'm blown away already just by how many people are doing such cool and amazing, awesome things like all over the country. So lots of goodies coming up.
Well, thank you for bringing everybody out there. It really, it means a lot. It means a lot.